Hello and welcome everyone to our launch webinar of the INHOPE Annual Report 2025. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'll be your host today. My name is Anastasia Dika. I'm INHOPE's Communications Manager. And before we jump into the annual report, I'd like to take you through some webinar guidelines for today. So this webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be published some days after the webinar on the INHOPE website, in our events playlist, and also on our YouTube channel. Please, as always in our webinars, be aware of your surroundings. Some of the contents discussed today may be sensitive in nature, so please make sure that only you have access to your screen. As you might have noticed, you are all muted and your video is disabled. The chat is also disabled today, but that doesn't mean that we don't want you to engage and ask questions. So please feel free to use the Q&A function. We will be answering questions towards the end of the webinar. If there's any questions that we didn't have time to address during the webinar, or something that was too extensive to touch on today, please feel free to send the questions to communications@inhope.org, and we'll make sure to get back to you as soon as possible. So without further ado, I'd like to officially kick off our webinar today, as we're launching the annual report 2025, and I'd like to present our speakers, Samantha Woolfe, our Executive Director, and Kalina Zografska, our Head of Technology and Innovation, who will be taking you through the data and insights from the past year.
Thanks. Thank you, Anastasia. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the launch of the INHOPE Annual Report 2025. A particular shout out to Anastasia. Thank you. She's the creator of our new look and much more accessible annual report that you'll be able to view online very shortly. And we also, of course, have the rest of INHOPE's team here supporting the work of the hotlines and the work that we're going to present. My name, as Anastasia said, is Samantha Woolfe, and I'm the director of INHOPE. And I'm joined today by Kalina, as Anastasia told us, who's our head of technology and innovation. And she will be presenting the toil of the incredible humans who work at the 58 INHOPE hotlines. 58 as of last week. The numbers are 57 because in 2025 we were 57 hotlines. It's timely at this moment that I diverge just a little, because there's no better way to understand the work of the hotlines than the New York Times article that some of you might have seen published last week. If you haven't had the chance to read the article or see the video, it is essential viewing. It's focused on the work of one of our hotline analysts from the Dutch hotline, Off Limits, and I encourage you to view it. As well as anything else, it brings an awareness of reporting and potentially financial support to the hotlines and to INHOPE. And you can see the grace and composure with which the analysts work every day, and with which Echo, the analyst who presents there, with the composure and grace with which he conducts himself as he has to classify images and videos of what are the worst horrors, of course, inflicted on young children. And it will make you or help you to truly understand, and possibly for the first time, even if you've been in this space a while, the work that the 220 INHOPE analysts do daily. And it's why we mandate our INHOPE hotlines to provide well-being support, regular counsellor sessions, and resiliency training to the analysts, which we'll touch on a bit later. So back to the annual report. I want to acknowledge this moment that we're in, which feels different this year. More chaotic, certainly. And this report lands in a year when the conversation about children's safety online has reached levels of public and potential urgency. It's always urgent, but with the removal of the legal basis for platforms to scan and detect content in Europe, both industry and child protection organisations were all scrambling to make, of course, to help push for a permanent measure to change this. In addition, of course, there are funding challenges for many of our hotlines, and this is at the fore of their minds as they continue every day to keep children safe. And INHOPE continues to expand. We do have one mission, which is to remove child sexual abuse from the internet, and we can only do this globally. A Japanese organization was the 8th hotline in the Indo-Pacific region at the end of last year, where in that region, the e-safety commissioner leads a regional chapter for INHOPE. The content of Africa has seen huge growth in internet access, of course, in the last decade, and hotlines are increasingly recognized as essential infrastructure there, as they are across Europe and in the Americas. And our Latin America chapter grows steadily too. And I mentioned that we're now 58, not 57 hotlines. And it was an organization, Educo Bolivia, that joined the INHOPE family last week. And we have at INHOPE, myself and the staff here have made it a personal crusade to expand into underserved regions because, of course, this is not a Western problem. It is a global problem. It was never just a Western problem. Governments, industries, and civil society have been converging on the same conclusion for some time, and that is that children cannot wait. And removing a single image requires the coordinated response that is precisely what this network exists to provide. And everything that you will hear today and that we will share with you makes that case. So if we can go on to the next slide. Oh, she disappeared. So INHOPE was founded in 1999 under the European Commission's Safer Internet programme, and the founding idea was simple and shows more than ever that no single hotline and no single country could tackle this alone. And we know this very well today, and many of us sit on stages talking about how we can work better together. The hotline model shows why this matters more than ever, because hotlines play this crucial role in the response to public reports of child sexual abuse material and online child sexual exploitation and abuse by providing a structured and accountable mechanism at a national level and through the exchange of the critical information transferred and shared and exchanged through the global network. They ensure that child sexual exploitation and abuse material is removed from public access as soon as possible. And a hotline receives the report from the public from anywhere, anytime, anonymously, and then it takes action. And without that hotline, the global average for content removal is over 40 days, as you will hear about shortly. But where there is no hotline, where there is a hotline, it's 1.4 days. So it's obviously a lot less. And I love this statistic because there's nothing else that tells the INHOPE story or expresses the urgency of putting a hotline in a country more clearly. And every number that Kalina shares with you today is an argument for why we need to continue to protect the INHOPE network, and why it needs to be not only protected, but also resourced and grown. And now I will pass over to Kalina so that she can share more information with you, a bit about how the journey of the hotlines and how the hotlines work, but also those figures that you're all looking forward to. Over to you, Kalina.
Thank you, Samantha, and thank you everyone for showing up in such large numbers and being interested in our work. It's always a privilege to speak about INHOPE, especially because when we're talking about key figures, we're actually representing the people who are sitting at those 57 members and doing this important work. So I'd like to move on to the key figures of 2025, and this section will give a snapshot of the scale, the flow, and the characteristics of the content we've seen exchanged through our network. This helps show both not only the growth in volumes, but also the complexity of addressing this challenge and working on this important problem. So to understand the figures that follow, it is very important to start from the beginning and to begin with how the system works in practice. So you might have heard about a platform called ICCAM, and you would have heard, you would have heard us explain how it works in practice. Basically, ICCAM is a system formed more than 10 years ago with the help of DigiConnect, the Safer Internet program that Samantha mentioned, and it stands for ICCAM, meaning I am an analyst sitting at a hotline seeing child abuse material. So when a report comes in a hotline in country A, the hotline has two duties. One of them is to notify the hosting provider in that country about that illegal content has been found and issue a content removed order or notice and takedown order. On the other side, it sends that same information to the law enforcement in that country, and then the law enforcement is responsible for two processes: to identify offenders and to identify victims. But because the internet operates in such a global scale, usually you never see the image on the left. It's never that the report receives as being hosted exactly in the country where it is reported. This is why we exist, and this is why ICCAM exists. The usual workflow of a report is that it is actually exchanged through a platform called ICCAM, hosted at the Interpol headquarters, and actually routed to country B. So when we talk about hotlines and reports, we often say we're talking about a reporting hotline and a hosting hotline, and we use the ICCAM system to track the year-to-year growth and flow of this material. So this illustrates how the ICCAM workflow works at a high level. But then if we were to measure what is the impact of the analysts working at our hotlines, the most important and top line figure that we are communicating is the number of exchange content. Why is that? Because reports are basically public URLs containing one or multiple image videos, and a single report from the public or from analyst working at a hotline can contain multiple URLs. So when we are talking about advocating and showcasing the work of our hotlines, we talk about exchange content, which is a single image or video URL represented at a public location. So if we were to compare 2025 to 2024, you can see that we have seen a massive growth. We have seen a growth of a total of more than 4.7 million files exchanged, with a growth of over 450%. It is also very important to note that this does not represent all the content that is seen by the hotlines. Of course, there will be a small subset of reports that will be both reported and hosted within the same country. So this is just everything that was exchanged through our system and everything that we have seen. And while this rise in exchange content is significant on its own, it's also important to track other parameters that show the impact of our work, the impact of the system existing and operating. So I'm moving on to the figure of new content. New content is what is commonly referred as the needle in the haystack. After we have deduplicated and basically removed all the material that was previously known that we are sure has been illegal, we come to the figure of new content, which is actually material that has to be seen by an analyst in order to be classified. All the material that is marked as new also goes as a candidate for triaging to law enforcement, both in the national context and in the international context. That means that new content has the highest likelihood of leading to safeguarding of children. And as you can see, the number of new content that was processed in 2025 has also risen significantly. So while we have seen more than 1.3 million in 2025, comparing to less than 1 million in 2024. So 28% of everything that we have seen exchanged through the platform has been new. Finally, it's also important to track how much of the material that we are seeing is illegal, because we are encouraging public reporting, we are encouraging proactive reporting, but of course, as analysts and citizens report material, it is not always that you're immediately shown a very abusive and a very illegal image. It is often that illegal and legal material is mixed together. So it is a natural mix that not all of the content we're seeing is illegal. 67% maps roughly to what we have seen in previous years, and that this is as our totals for the exchange content moved, the totals for the illegal content have moved as well. And if we were to map out where this country, in which countries this content is hosted, the system operates a smart routing mechanism and a small detection mechanism, which basically maps where the hosting provider and the hosting server of that country is. And you can see some of the top hosting countries. You have the Netherlands with 43%, Romania with 11%, the US with 9%, Vietnam with 5%, Russia with 5%, etc., etc. And here we are not talking about the simply good or bad positions of countries within the list, because it all comes to cooperation on the local level and enforcement on the local level. It is better if you have high hosting in a country where you can have fast enforcement than the content disappearing into a country where you don't have any enforcement and you can't actually achieve any kind of fast removal. And on the opposite side of the equation, in order to have reporting countries, we have to have, in order to find out where content is hosted, we have to have strong reporters operating at on existing reports and getting input into the system, and these are the top the top 5 reporters. We have Bulgaria, which contributes more than 2/3, has contributed to more than 2/3 of the content exchanged. We have the Netherlands with 11%, the US with 12.5%, the UK with 10%, and France and Germany with 1%. Lastly, other metrics that are tracked about where content is found is what kind of a site contributes to a high number of illegal exchange and illegal material. And the top 4 hosting provider types are forum with 62%, website with 22%, image host with 14%, and file host with 2%. We will touch on this a little bit also in the trends and insights area, but basically why 62% is and forum is the highest category is because forums appear and disappear and seem to evade detection and enforcement quite in a quite an intelligent way. So we are seeing entire forums disappear and then appear under a new jurisdiction and a new hoster, making them quite difficult to remove. Additionally, a forum is a dynamic category, and even though it's a single, it can be a single location, what we are seeing is that new threads with new discussion, hosting new folders of abuse keep reappearing on the same forums. And if we are talking about who is depicted in these images, the pictures are consistent with previously reported information in previous years. We are seeing that, apologies, we're talking about the age. 94% of the age of victims depicted is prepubescent, 4 are pubescent, 0.1 are infant. If, on the other hand, we are talking about who is depicted in the set of images seen in our exchange, 98% are female, 1 are male, and 1% are both. We do already know that reports coming from the INHOPE network are slightly biased towards reporting of female victims. We know that if we are looking at the public web or other sources, boys are underrepresented and actually represent a higher proportion than what we are seeing here. And in the end, if we were to close out the journey of a report end to end, once the report has gotten to the hosting country, takedown was issued, age and gender was classified. The hotline in the end reports to us the times to which they have on one end reported to the hosting provider, reported to law enforcement, and then removed. This, you can think of this as a funnel. So 76% of the cases, the hosting provider was contacted within 24 hours. Then in 53% of the cases, the following action was done and the report to law enforcement was done. And in 10% of the cases, the content removal also happened in the same 24-hour period. It is expected and normal that these numbers fall through one after the other because it is a funnel. One step needs to happen, then a 24-hour period, wait period is enforced until the next step happens. And in the end, Samantha touched on this a little bit, but this is probably the most important and relevant argument on what is the hotline operating model and why a network of hotlines like INHOPE should exist. This is a number from quoted back from 2024, but it is also consistent today in our data. We are basically seeing that the average time to remove in hotlines where we don't have a network can be up to 41 days, whereas the average time to report in a country where we have a hotline, where we have strong enforcement, is 1.4 days. And in the end, apart from measuring all the data, comparing it to previous years, and laying it out in order to demonstrate how much the scale of not only the scale, but also the complexity of the problem is growing. We've also asked our hotline analysts to explain what are the current trends and what can we learn and take away, what can we expect in the years to come. And unfortunately, you see a similar flywheel like this for other topics, but this is a flywheel of current trends, which shows us there are still challenges to be done and still battles to be won. So if we go clockwise from 12 to 12, we are seeing an evolving distribution channels and hosting evasions. What I've explained about forums is that we are seeing that as soon as takedown happens, it is very often that the same operator with the same content can archive and pull the same services on another site. We are seeing a growth in sexual extortion and technology facilitated exploitation. This means that if previously the targeting and chatting with minors could only be done one-on-one, now we are seeing the use of AI chatbots, etc., targeting children en masse and scaling this problem. We are also seeing an increase in AI-generated and synthetic imagery. While the numbers for this were in the hundreds last year, now they're in the thousands. So the percentual increase is huge, and the challenges to detect AI from non-AI will continue to increase. We are seeing also more streaming, mobile, and concealed content. This means that while we operate in a public internet, not all URLs are permanent, and it will be more difficult to issue takedowns and safeguard victims on these platforms that are emergent and have non-permanent content. We are also seeing a growing use of obfuscation techniques, so expiring URLs, refers, and other methods to which we know that a hotline analyst has seen a picture of abuse on one hand, but that is very difficult to reproduce even an hour later or from a different location. But maybe most importantly of all, we are seeing an increased severity and diversification of content. We are seeing even smaller children abused in more severe ways. With that, hopefully you can have an idea on that the scale and the complexity of the problem has risen dramatically in 2025, and the challenges for the members operating in our network remain. But with that in mind, I'd like to pass on the mic back to Samantha, and where she will talk a little bit about milestone and achievements, basically the battles in this fight along the way and what we have achieved to date in 2025. Samantha?
Thank you, Kalina. And I think the last slide, unfortunately, is kind of where we are today, and also a taste of things to come. Yeah, so what you've just seen, the content hosted across 86 countries, reported from 41, exchanged at 450% the volume of the previous year, makes the case more powerfully than I think than any argument, alongside the 41 days versus 1.4 days, where there is no hotline, why a coordinated global response is entirely necessary. So looking at the three pillars of progress, technology and community, action and awareness, and policy and progress, our achievements fall across these three areas, and each of them strengthens a different dimension of the coordinated global response that this work demands. And each of these also is reflected and reflects a pillar of our strategy 2025 to 2028, which was built by the board, the secretariat, and our members. And it's grounded in what the network needs, in what is needed externally, and where we know that we can deliver and where we are already delivering. So if we go to the next slide, tech and community, technology, training, and the hotline family. The first major ICCAM migration in a decade is now complete. ICCAM started in 2014. ICCAM that Kalina gave you in quite a lot of detail started in 2014 as a pilot. And obviously now it's really the core of all the work that we do and all the work that the hotlines do. And so it's a more scalable, community-driven platform built to handle the report volumes that we've been talking about. The technology is obviously only as strong as the people using it, so we're happy to have delivered 4 new training modules: ICCAM, Report Box 2.0, ICAP sites, and analysts' well-being. 59 analysts completed basic core training, and 21 achieved certification, and we've completed 7 peer-to-peer exchange visits, which is when hotlines visit each other across 13 hotlines in Europe. Without visiting each other, they're really not able to advance and learn from each other in the way that they do, and have the strength of the relationships and the buddy hotline relationships that hotlines and the analysts form together. And those 220 analysts that I've talked about and that Kalina talked about, they really do have a very strong bond because of the work they do and the way that they support each other. And that work is funded by our work with the European Union. And we also were happy to welcome 3 more hotlines: a second hotline in the Netherlands, INHOPE hotline in Zambia, and the Andorra Digital, which is a government hotline in Andorra. Our analysts do this work that no one should have to do at all, but definitely they shouldn't have to do it alone. And that's why this forming of these relationships and this kind of family training together, supporting each other through these buddy systems, and the exchange visits is really the lifeline of the work that they do together. So if we go on to action and awareness. In brand communications and convening, so in 2025, INHOPE stepped forward publicly in new ways, a new brand identity and website, and I hope that you've had the chance to look at it. And if you haven't, please, after this, do look around the new website. As we've already mentioned, a fully digital annual report. We, in spring and summer last year, we conducted 4 expert insight webinars with one of our partners, Resolver, and between these we drew almost 500 participants, and the INHOPE Summit with over 300 participants online and 100 in person. And this year, I'll just give it a shout out, the summit will be in Dublin on October the 6th and 7th. A save the date was shared on our socials last week, and you'll be hearing more about that soon. And then we also had the launch of the Universal Classification Schema website, making publicly available, the schema making publicly available the unified protocol that allows any organization anywhere to classify content and share hashes and metadata consistently, regardless of the jurisdiction. And this is the common language that you will have seen a lot on our socials in the last couple of years, that we talk about really that the ecosystem has needed, and that INHOPE chose to build. It was the brainchild of Scott Anderson, who's formerly with Queensland Police, still works very, very closely with us on building this common language with a number of other partners. So that's where we are with action and awareness. So if we can move to the next slide and talk a little bit about policy and progress. So 2025, as I said at the beginning, we're in a strange period, but 2025 delivered some significant policy achievements. A new 3-year framework partnership agreement with the European Commission. EU member states reached a common position on the CSAM regulation last year. We'll see where these go this year. Hotlines have been recognised in the European Parliament's position in the recast Child Sexual Exploitation and Abuse Directive. Again, things are changing, so this is very reflective of our 2025 annual report. And 11 INHOPE members by the end of last year had been awarded with trusted flagger status under the Digital Services Act across 11 European Union countries. So this gives them a legal weight that they didn't have before, and platforms have to respond to them as a matter of priority. The legal framework is catching up with operational reality, but and I'll return to this in the conclusion shortly, but this legal recognition means little if the organizations doing this work cannot sustain themselves. And this is something that we really need to make sure and push for together as we push through in 2026. So if we move to the partnerships slide, obviously we don't do this work alone, and we certainly don't talk about doing this work alone. I've said many times a global coordinated response is needed, and that requires more than just a network of hotlines. It requires industry, government, law enforcement, and we work very closely with all of these organizations, and of course civil society. Many of our hotlines are civil society, and we need to all work from the same foundation. So on this side, on the next slide, the key to success are partnerships. They enable the hotlines to issue notices that lead to rapid removal of confirmed child sexual abuse material. Then there are different types of partnerships, of course, that they fund the technology, they fund the training, the policy engagement that drives systemic change, which is also needed, and through the various different technologies we've talked about, schema, seaport, notice, building on open source technology to standardize, for example, notice and takedown of platforms, both the VLOPs and the smaller ones. These partnerships are really helping us close the gaps in this ecosystem, in this universal ecosystem. And no platform can cite in future, for example, with the project notice, no platform will be able to cite technical complexity as a reason for delay. Standardization is really the way forward, and something that we've been talking about a lot in the last few years, and especially in the last year, because it's really going to it's really a game changer for those of us in this space. We are particularly, of course, grateful to our annual funding partners, many of whom are on the next slide. Their support has been foundational to the work that we've been doing, and especially through a period of significant change and some wobbly times, shall we say, and a time of renewal and change and reset. We've been so grateful to have our supporters and our funders. And what it's meant is that INHOPE has been able to enter 2026, not just kind of recovering and surviving, but really thriving. So thank you, a special thank you to them. So going to the conclusions, obviously, I think let me think about everything that we've help you think about everything that we've heard today, because we want you to feel active about this webinar, not defeated like there's nothing you can do, but really quite positive about the things that you can do to support INHOPE, but also have some kind of faith in the systems that we are helping lead, and also where we're contributing with others and with colleagues. And so if we go on to the conclusion slide, we've heard firstly that the scale and the complexity of online CSAM is accelerating. In that last current trend slide of Kalina's, in short, our data tells us that the scale cannot be solved with people and technology alone, and that we need more than ever this network. And really, this is a network that leads on and aligns on solving these problems together. On point 2, in a conversation with an industry leader last week, who was moderating a panel I was on at the Trust and Safety Forum in Lille, we discussed how INHOPE is really building the most actively collaborative and coordinated responses that exist to this problem today that we know of. We really do bring everybody together in a way that others can't, because the hotlines, when we set up a hotline in a country, we bring together the law enforcement angle, the government ministry angle, the child safety protection organizations, and of course industry and the providers. So making sure that all across the board the hotline is known about, and then of course raising awareness amongst the public to make sure they know about the possibility to report. Fragmentation and standardization. This is really, as I've said already, INHOPE's journey at the moment. We are leading with standardization with our current technology projects that we've already talked about: Schema, Seaport, Notice, and an industry reporting pilot. These are all game changers for fighting child sexual abuse and exploitative content online more efficiently than has been done before. And then, of course, our industry partnerships, as I touched on already, and the government funding that we receive and that our hotlines receive sustain this work. And right now, both are needed urgently, and we need to keep pushing forward to make sure that they are awareness of the work that they do and the critical work that they do is raised. And to every partner who's come and joined this webinar today, to all of those of you who we don't know yet, but we hope to get to know after this, your support is what keeps this infrastructure operational. It's not just abstract, but it's really the work that's done every day. So thank you very much. And when INHOPE started, it started with a single conviction that hotlines working together could protect more children than hotlines working alone. And we know that in groups we can get things done that we can't get done alone. And so 26 years on, from 9 hotlines to 58 today, 57 at the end of last year, we have proved this, and everything in the report that you can read after this has proved that this works, that working together does work. And we're here because children's lives depend on this work. The work of the hotlines shows that. And we want them and the survivors to know that we're not going anywhere, that INHOPE plans to stay around and to do what we can for these children. I'd like to thank you for listening to us today. I'm going to pass back to Anastasia, who will let you know how to use the Q&A function for questions. And anything, of course, that we didn't get to today, you can send to communications@inhope.org. Over to you, Anastasia.
Thank you both, Kalina and Samantha, for a wonderful insight into the data and our activities of the past year. And at this point, we would like to open up the space for questions. Of course, at the end of this webinar, you will get an early access link to actually view the annual report yourself and scroll through our new digital annual report. But for now, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A function. That is the little button next to the chat, and Samantha and Kalina will be happy to answer them. I'll kick us off with the first question from an audience member. With all of this data and all of the insights from 2024 in mind, what will be the strategic direction for INHOPE in 2026? The main strategic priority. Maybe Samantha, you could.
Yeah, thank you for the question. As I think I mentioned, standardization is actually our main strategic priority moving forward. So it's strengthening the work of the hotlines. We've got a meeting next week, a members meeting, and it's actually on strengthening hotlines effectiveness. And the way that we strengthen hotlines effectiveness, what we've worked out in the last couple of years, is through this standardization. So these projects of ours, the schema, speaking a common language, seaport, making sure that we are working in a more efficient way with law enforcement in every country, where we have a hotline where they working with their law enforcement, where they have access to ICCAM, that technology platform that Kalina talked about, where we have it's a pilot at the moment, but there are about 14 or 15 law enforcement that work to have access to ICCAM, so that there is faster victim identification enabled in those countries. And then the other two projects I talked about, Notice, which built on an open source technology that we have, we are able to, we are looking at how we can get faster, again, standardization, faster responses from industry to take down, and then an industry reporting technology too. And then also we haven't been doing so much on network expansion in the last 18 months or so, and we'll probably be buckling down a bit more on that. So those are our kind of objectives moving forward. But I would say the highest priority is standardization for efficiency.
Thank you, Samantha.
Maybe Kalina wants to weigh in on that. I don't know.
All complete from my side.
Thank you both. So at this time, we have no further questions. Let's say I give it another minute, and if no further questions come in, then I'll give over to you for some final remarks, and we can share the first version of the annual report with attendees. Let's give it one more minute. And maybe to add for everyone who hasn't seen this in the Q&A yet, the New York Times article that was mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, there's a link to it in the Q&A. So if you're interested in that, feel free to check that out. So if there are no further questions at this time, of course, as I mentioned, always feel free to send them through to communications@inhope.org if anything comes to mind. Maybe as you're looking through the report in your own free time, you can access the report now either by scanning the QR code with your phone or by typing in the URL that you can see on screen. And while you do that, I'd like to hand over one last time to Samantha and Kalina for some closing thoughts.
Thank you, Anastasia. I think taking our figures, I think with such a phenomenal percentage increase in confirmed illegal content, a huge increase in AI generated imagery, live streaming, sextortion, obfuscation techniques. All of these are designed to evade detection, which brings in another political discussion, but we'll leave that for the moment. But the problem is obviously not stabilizing. Rather, it's accelerating, as we've said, across borders and across platforms and across jurisdictions simultaneously. So I think more than ever, we can see that in many ways, a global network like INHOPE is more important than ever. I don't think I can stress enough how amazing the work is that the hotlines do day in, day out, and also the relationships that they maintain with each other. And so I'm really proud to be part of this, and I hope that we can continue, like I said, to actually become much more efficient and also working much more closely with everybody who's in this area to continue to make sure that we can fight child sexual abuse more efficiently and hopefully work towards our vision of an internet free of child sexual abuse and exploitation material. That's the goal for this year and beyond. Thank you. Kalina?
Perfectly said. I just want to complement and add something to that. We are always talking about, in all the years that we have been tracking this data for 10 years, the volume is continuously expanding, the complexity is continuously expanding. And the insights are definitive that these problems cannot be solved with people alone and with technology alone. It's only with a joint work between all of these stakeholders, all of us working together as a network and working across sectors. So if you are working with data, if you're classifying, please find a way to join through the universal classification schema so that your data is comparable. If you're an service operator, receiving reports or sending out reports, soon we will be developing a model of email reporting of CSAM that can be automated. I think the community is very professional, very tight-knit, and we do have a route of getting ahead of this problem and working together. So hopefully we'll see you all this year in this and future events, and we will refine the way in how we do so. Thank you for listening to everything we had to say.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Kalina and Samantha, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. And I wish everyone a wonderful rest of your day, evening, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Anastasia, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.